out today because the sheer fact that you got away from the air conditioning and the TV to come here and to try to think about these things and hear me or hear you talk about it or whatever shows me that you guys are in the vanguard right now. You guys are in the lead. Now what we got to do is try to bring all these other people up to speed. And how do you do that? You do that by living your life the way that you know it should be lived, providing that good example. And when you get a chance to talk to somebody, or when you hear some idiot say, "Oh, you don't believe in that UFO crap, do you?" Set them straight. And I thank you a lot. Are there any questions?
You said you studied the cattle mutilations years ago. Have you learned anything about what that was all about, or can you relate that to what's the agenda?
That appears to be scientific research. You'll find this covered in the Alien Agenda. A few years ago down at A&M, they discovered that of all animals in the animal kingdom, the cow comes the closest to having the same number of chromosomes as the human. Interesting. Plus, as we've all been told, you are what you eat. So, you know, that's the most probably the one animal most closely associated with the human food chain. So what appears to be going on is that they collect these cows, and the reason it's so widespread is so that you get some from higher elevations and lower elevations and colder climates and warmer climates. So you catch it from all over, and you study those soft tissues, those reproductive organs, tongues, because this is where the radioactivity, this is where the pollutants would gather. And by studying those soft tissues, you get a pretty good idea on what the levels of pollution on this planet are doing. Are they going up? Are they going down? Are they slowly going up? Are they jumping? You know, this is where you study. And I think we can all understand that obviously most people have not gotten nearly upset over a bunch of dead, mutilated cows as they would over the same number of dead, mutilated people. Okay? So again, it's primarily probably scientific study. But secondarily, it's part of the Alien Agenda, because by leaving behind these carcasses, I mean, let's face it, they can snatch a cow up and carry him off up into space and work on him. Why can't you just dump him out in space, and then we just have missing cows? This is part of the Alien Agenda. To drop them back under very strange circumstances. There's not enough. If you're a total debunker, a total closed mindset, you can always fall back on predators. Say as predators. Of course, as one old rancher told me back in New Mexico, back in the 70s, he said, "You tell me how a predator can pull a cow's heart out through a 1-inch hole in its neck." And he had seen that, had experienced that himself. So that's what's going on there. But by the way, there's an attendant issue there too, which is the black helicopters and the trucks and stuff. And what apparently is going on here, again, our government, who tells us that nothing's happening, is nevertheless intensely interested in what's happening with the cattle mutilations and are using their secret black helicopters and their trucks with the USDA seals on them and stuff to run roadblocks, and they are chasing after the UFOs and in some instances possibly even copying what they're doing to try to understand what's going on.
During your investigations for this book, did you get to talk to any of the defense journalists possibly about their experience or involvement in this whole phenomenon?
The defense journalists? You mean the people that cover the Defense Department or whatever?
Right.
Well, hey, there is no news media. I'm watching that news conference where Colonel Haynes was announcing their big report and how that all these people were mistaken. It was just crash test dummies they dropped into the desert of New Mexico. And of course, when they hit, it compressed them down to about 3 foot tall and broke off a couple fingers so that, you know, and these military intelligence officers with the 509th Bomb Group, the only group to carry nuclear weapons at that time, this was our first string guys, and they couldn't tell the difference between a smashed, crashed mannequin and an alien being, you know. But the news media that was in the audience, grab this. Yeah, I know y'all probably were, you know, unfortunately most of us have to make a living, so we can't sit and watch all this stuff live and see how it really unfolds. But first off, Colonel Haynes himself, who was given the briefing when they pointed out the discrepancies in the time period between 47 and between about 56, 57 when these tests were taking place, he made the statement, and this is what they should have globbed onto and put in the headlines all across the country. He said, well, I really don't know what they saw in 1947. He made that statement, okay? And that's the bottom line. But of course, that never gets reported to you, and here's why. Because when they went to questions and answering, one of these defense journalists, as you're talking about, some guy that's there covering the Pentagon, he says, Colonel, can you tell us about what's going on in Area 51? And this is a verbatim exchange. And Colonel Haynes says, are you referring to Groom Lake? Well, of course he is. That's where Area 51 is. This reporter says, well, no, actually, I was talking about that scene from Independence Day. Now, there's the mentality of your defense journalist.
I'm going to give you a lead for your next book. I'm
All
a
right.
defense journalist, and I was very interested in this issue and privately talked with other defense journalists. They know, some of them have seen it. There's also a secret base in West Virginia that the government goes in and out of that some of these journalists have followed. And maybe as they age, you'll have another book.
I think so. But right now, see, they want to keep that nice job with all those nice perks, and you don't do that by asking the hard questions. There again, though, is why she's giving the reason and the rationale. All I'm saying is there is no journalism. There's just no news media anymore.
In your book, you talk about Alternative 3. Could you go into that just a little bit?
Alternative 3 is a weird scenario. I'm not sure. Take note, Dave. I'm not sure I buy into this much at all, but there is some intriguing evidence to support this. Alternative 3 has to do with the idea that the people who really run the global economy, okay? We all know that 2% of the population controls the vast resources of this country and globally, all right? So we're talking, and of that 2%, most of those are families, and so we're not talking about the wives, sweethearts, children. We're talking about the handful of people that control this globe, okay? And it's real. And I'm sure there are those who jump up and say, oh, you just love conspiracies, but hey, this happens to be a fact, okay? And the idea is that throughout history it's shown that when a big war comes along and something gets going real tough, these people, the tough get going. During World War II, you don't think the Krupp family hung around. These people bail out, they go to South America, they go other places. And so the idea is that starting back in the 50s, when they realized the danger of nuclear weapons, their first alternative was to, let me get it straight here. One was underground. What was the first one? The first one was that they were just going to move to other countries. Okay, but now when they realized that wasn't going to work, because nuclear weapons will find you no matter where you go, and the fallout. Everybody remembers on the beach where, the last survivors are in Australia waiting on the radioactive cloud to get there. So then they decided that they would go underground, okay? Now there is absolutely no question that there was a burst of underground construction taking place in the United States starting back in the 50s. And it goes far beyond what was necessary just to keep the lines of communication and government operating. All right, and a lot of these underground facilities, y'all may not be aware of it, but there are underground facilities for the Federal Reserve System. There are underground facilities for IBM. There are underground facilities for a lot of the major corporations. All right, now this is alternative 2. But then apparently, according to this scenario, that these movers and shakers realize that even underground, they're not going to be safe. They're not going to be safe from heavy-duty nuclear explosions. They're not going to be safe, certainly, from earthquakes or earth changes, geophysical changes that might take place. So alternative 3 is the fact that there is a secret, covert space program that is building bases on the moon and perhaps Mars, and we are all being kept in the dark because we're expendable. We'll just have to live here on the earth and put up with whatever happens here, but when the going gets tough, the tough are going to fly off to Mars or the moon, where they'll have these bases and sanctuaries where they'll be okay. Whether it's nuclear war, whether it's global pollution or global warming or ultraviolet rays make life untenable on the surface of the earth, that they're got a place to go. And considering the past history and considering their very natural desires, we all do, for self-survival, and there is an argument to be made for this. I'm not totally convinced of it. Although I think you could see that it would be pretty simple. Let's consider that, you know, the Nazis had flying saucers on the drawing board, and there's no question about it. The question is, did they ever get one operational? Then you get into controversy. Some people say yes, they did, and others say no, they didn't. But whether they did or didn't, they had this equipment, and this was based not on rockets or jets, but on electromagnetism, okay? Let's say, for the sake of argument, that somewhere back there, somebody did come up with a power device powered by electromagnetism that was able to neutralize the force of gravity, and you were able to take a ship of any size or weight, or even could be lightweight for that matter. You know, who says you've got to have titanium steel? You know, if you can build a field that will get you up and get you going, you don't need to have one of those giant rockets. And let's say that while the eyes of the media and the world is focused on our V2s and then the Vanguard rockets and then the Apollo shots and right on up to the space shuttle where we're up there with Russians and we're, you know, we got the Mirror and our guys and we're all merging, and that's where everybody's watching. While we're watching that and still have to have these huge rockets that spend tons of fuel lifting this stuff off the Earth. Let's say over here they've got some craft that's powered by electromagnetism or something along that line, and these things just raise up, take off, and go where you want them to. Would it be possible to keep that secret? Sure. Could this account for some of the UFO sightings? Possible. So there is that. And I, for one, think that there probably are some UFO sightings that are probably secret weapons technology. And by the way, that comes back to the whole question of the secrecy. The one thing that's very plain from the documents is that the one group that is without question in charge of the UFO issue, almost on a global basis, is the United States military. And the military, in the military mind, the UFOs obviously would represent advanced technology. And any advanced technology to the military mind represents potential weaponry. And therefore it's got to be kept secret, because we got to have it. But while I'm on that, let me add this. This 2%, this controlling group or the elite that runs the world, the New World Order boys, as I call them, okay? They control the governments, which in turn controls the militaries. I mean, let's face it, our CIA for years, going all the way back to where the head of the CIA was Allen Dulles, and he and his brother John Foster, who was Secretary of State, was setting U.S. policy to benefit United Fruit, which they had been the lawyers for. Yeah, it's the old boy network, and that's the way it all works, okay? So when they go and destabilize our bins and take over another country, it's for the benefit of United Fruit. And that's what's going on now, you know? And so this secrecy is to a great extent pushed by this ruling wealthy elite, because they don't want you to know that there may be non-polluting cheap alternatives to petroleum and nuclear power, okay? Because they owe their wealth and their power to their monopolies over energy, medicine, transportation, okay? It's just like the old line's been for years. They'll never find a cure for cancer because there's more people making a living off of cancer than dying from it. And it's true. Yes.
I don't know, did you have a chance to read Day After Roswell with this Colonel
Of course,
and
yeah.
just wanted some of your thoughts on him?
There's an interesting thing. If y'all don't know about Corso, I really recommend you read his book. Corso claims that he not only saw the debris, the wreckage, and one of the alien bodies back at the time as it was being transported to Wright-Patterson, but that in the early 60s, as the officer in charge of the Army's Foreign Technology Desk, he was the one who passed along alien technology to some of our large corporations that led to the development of integrated circuitry, stealth technology, Kevlar body armor, laser technology, yeah. And this is not as far-fetched as it sounds. Because here's the way he said it worked. Let's say on night vision, all the way back into World War II, the Germans and the Japanese and us, we were all working on something that would allow our troops to see in the dark. Because, you know, up until even today, really, if it gets dark, the battle stops. If you can't see what you're doing and you're afraid of hitting your own men, the battle stops. And the side that can come up with the ways of seeing in the dark is going to have a tremendous advantage over the other. So they've worked on this for years. So Corso says in the early 60s, all he did was find out the name of the lead scientist at one of the big corporations. I can't even remember now which one it was. Made an appointment with him. He shows up. He says, I understand you're working on night vision. He says, yeah. He says, well, here, take a look at this. Gives him some of the film that they took off. He says they took off of the aliens' eyes after Roswell, and it allowed them to see under any kind of light circumstances. The guy took a look at it, tested a little bit of it, said, wow, you know, it's pretty neat. Where'd you get this? He said, from France. I couldn't resist that. I meant the cone heads. Free from France. But that's basically what he said. He said, this is technology that's being developed in Europe, you know, somewhere else. And it got to my desk, foreign technology. The guy goes, okay. And so he takes the piece back. The guy only has the idea. He goes back and adds in what he's had. A natural study and a natural progress of the study and development of night vision is not disrupted in any meaningful way, but it's given added impetus. And pretty quick they've got night vision. And now it's to the point now to where it's, I believe it's on the commercial market now. If you spend a few $100, you buy that night vision stuff. Sam's, you can go get night vision stuff at Sam's.
Hey, you know it's there.
And I'm sure if you go and track it back, you'd find that, you know, some big corporation owns the copyrights on it and all like that, and they're making the money on it. And Corso said that was fine. They told these corporations, you take it, it's your idea, you profit from it, you get the copyrights, because all we want is the technology. Because once they develop it, of course, the first person who's going to buy it's the Army, and then they've got what they want. And it's done in such a way that it does not disrupt the R&D process. Yes?
Question, a lot of people seem to be wrapped up in the idea that the government has to tell us that, yeah, UFOs exist. Do you see something like the internet being a grassroots organization that kind of circumvents that and gets the word out and allows people to experience it themselves in effect, where you no longer need these people in Washington telling you, oh, yeah, they exist, you know, we've got proof it's on the internet, or it's
well, that of course is part of the problem with this whole thing, is that I think the government probably would have come out long before now and said, hey, they're real and we're trying to cope with it. Except for the problem is that if they come out and announce that, yeah, UFOs are real, but we're not exactly sure who they are, and worse yet, we don't have any control over it, then how long is it going to take us to stop and think, well, now wait a minute, I'm working 6 months out of the year making money that goes to the government, whose primary duty is to protect me, and they can't protect me, so why am I doing this? They can't have that. It could be total disruption on their part. They can't admit that they don't have a total handle on the whole thing. I don't see the government coming out doing anything, all right, except to react. You know, and next time they'll have to come up with another dumb